welcome to Beyond Compare Ministries, God at Work. It's good to be with you again this week. I'm Pastor Rauna and Jerry Paladino is here with me as well to be doing some beautiful songs. But we're looking at a subject today that's really been hard for a lot of people to deal with over the years. It's a subject that many have struggled with. There's people that have fought to deal with it and live with it, for that matter, for many years. And so we're going to be looking at the subject of abortion today. Some people find it a horrible subject to have to talk about, and others find it something that they need to talk about. So hopefully this will be of help to some as I share a story. But anyways, Jerry, have you got the song Beyond Compare ready for us?
Wish I had words to say that could in some way express the warmth of your tender love, the thrill of your sweet caress. Love so amazing, so divine, love never changing, rich and rare, defies any words my heart can find. Your love is beyond compare. Roses of fairest bloom, violets of purest hue, the fragrance of sweet perfume, oceans of azure blue, the radiance of a summer's day, white clouds floating on the crystal air, but all pale beside your love. Your love is beyond compare. Beyond every song that human voices have ever sung, beyond any word that human tongue could ever speak, higher than the highest, furthest mountain peak, deeper than the deepest ocean currents flow, more than any human heart could know, purer than the freshest driven snow. And yet you did condescend to travel our rugged road, companion of humble men, bearing our heavy load. And with undying sympathy, you dry every tear, ease every care. I worship your majesty. Your love is beyond compare. Beyond every song that human voices have ever sung, beyond any word that human tongue could ever speak, higher than the highest, furthest mountain peak, deeper than the deepest ocean currents flow, more than any human heart can know, purer than the freshest driven snow. And yet you did condescend to travel our rugged road, companion of humble men, bearing our heavy load. And with undying sympathy, you dry every tear, ease every care. I worship your majesty. Your love is beyond compare. Your love is beyond compare. Your love is beyond compare.
His love is beyond compare. I can tell you that with great assurance. His love is definitely beyond compare. Nothing compares to his love. And this story that I have right now for you is an example of it. Many years ago, after my first child was born, I ended up quite sick. About a year later, a couple of years later, I was very, very sick and had to come back to Canada from Africa. They found I had a very rare tropical disease, and the disease was a malabsorption disease. So it ended up, I got pregnant with this child that we're going to be talking about today. And because I was on different medications because of this tropical disease, they put me on the pill thinking so I wouldn't get pregnant, but they didn't quite think about it because they forgot that it was a malabsorption disease, so I wasn't absorbing the pill. Anyways, I got pregnant, and the doctors figured because of all the medications that I was on, the only smart thing to do would be to abort it, because there was absolutely no possibility of this child being normal, but that it would be probably like a complete vegetable its entire life at that point. And so they had almost convinced me. Actually, they had an appointment booked and everything else for me to go in and have the abortion, but I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. Something within me would not allow me to do it like God. And I'm not here to discuss the rights or wrongs of abortion. I have my opinions on it, most definitely. And as you'll be able to tell, I was not one that really wanted to get into having an abortion. But it was such a difficult time, that whole pregnancy, because here I was, and I'd been told there was no chance of this child being normal. None. And so, I was praying a lot during that pregnancy. I was determined that the doctors were going to be proved wrong on that one. And guess what? He was born. He was quite content inside the womb because he was a month overdue, and it wasn't a miscalculation of dates or anything else. All the signs of being so overdue were all there. The placenta had calcified, and he was all dried up and everything else. But anyhow, he was born. The easiest delivery I had of all three of my deliveries. For you women out there, I only had an hour and 17 minutes of hard labor. It's all I had. An hour and 17 minutes. That's a pretty amazing short delivery. And it was the easiest delivery I had. But he was born at 9 pounds, 11 ounces, a very big baby, so it should have been a harder delivery. But he was born at 9 pounds, 11 ounces, the happiest, healthiest baby you could ever imagine. He was so, so happy. And he had these great big, huge dimples that every time he smiled, you would see them. Here's a picture of him when he was just a toddler. This is actually his first time walking. He's got these great big dimples here on his cheek. This is my son, Carl. And Carl went on. He did amazing things. For somebody that was supposed to be a complete vegetable, it's amazing some of the things that he accomplished. But he, from the very, very beginning, was a very compassionate person. Loving, compassionate. And in this next picture, you can see him. His little sister was born he was not even 13 months old when the littlest one was born. And he was so loving and compassionate toward her. Not a speck of jealousy or anything else, just constantly. If his little baby was crying, he was over there to do whatever he could to comfort her, to help her. In every instant, he would be the first one to reach to Michelle if she was upset about something or needed something. But he carried on, and he heard me tell the story several times of how of how he was supposed to have been aborted, but that I just couldn't go through with it. So anyhow, I was sitting down having a coffee at a coffee shop that I frequented quite a lot with some friends, and by the time he would have been about 3 or 4. I was sitting there talking to my friends. I said, "Oh, that's the doctor that had wanted me to abort Carl," and he'd heard the story before. So here's Carl, this little toddler, wandering over to the doctor, and I saw him, and he extended his hand, and that's when I arrived there. And he said, "Hi, I'm broccoli." The doctor looked at him, and he looked at me. He said, "What's he talking about? He's broccoli?" And I said, "Don't ask me, ask him." So he looked at Carl, and he said, "What do you mean you're broccoli?" And he said, "Well, you told my mom I would be a complete vegetable. And the only thing about me that looks like a vegetable is my hair, and it looks like broccoli." Now, if you look at this next picture, you can see his broccoli hairdo there. He's the one in the middle. And he's a little younger in this picture, but that's exactly what his hair looked like. It looked like a bunch of broccoli. So anyhow, Carl went on, and all through his childhood, he was the one, he would be there. Somebody was the underdog, and he would be there reaching out to them. He had some struggles as he was growing, nothing to do with them wanting me to abort him, or of him wanting to do certain things. But he had an issue with his leg. He had what they called Osgood-Schlater's disease, which meant the muscles that were growing harder and faster. It was pulling on some tendons, etc. And he had to have his leg put in a cast for 6 months. But that was his major health issues at that point, as well as he had a problem with ear infections, and they had to put tubes in his ears constantly. And at one point, the doctor was doing some tests, and he had to be checked all frequently because of these ear infections. And they did some x-rays, and they found what looked like one of the tubes had fallen inward. So they were going to have to operate and remove it. So here he was. He was just quite young at the time, maybe 5 or 6 years old, somewhere in there. And he had surgery to have this tube supposedly removed. Except they got in there, and they found that if they hadn't operated thinking they were removing a tube, it could have killed him, because he had a tumor that was growing within his ear. So not only did the enemy try and get rid of him when I was pregnant with him, then with the tumor in his ear that could have killed him if they didn't catch it then. And so then he had to regularly see the doctor because of it and about it and everything else. But he kept moving on and doing everything that he could. He was into sports. He was into, you name it. He was a happy kid. The only thing, he wasn't really into the school. He loved the social life with it, but he wasn't, he could get by. He was a very smart kid. And so he could get by with next to no effort. And he'd, get, good grades. Not the best grades that he could, but he'd get good grades. And so all the way through, that's what he would do. But, he always was very social. And my present husband, we were good friends. And the kids all called him Uncle Bob. Well, when we announced to the kids that we were, and actually Carl was one of the ones who would constantly go up to Bob, and he would say, "Hey, Uncle Bob, why don't you marry my mom?" And Bob would say the same thing I would, because we're just friends. We're not looking to get married. And finally, we announced to the kids that we were going to get married. And Carl comes up and he says, "Well, Mom, does that mean that I can call him Uncle Daddy now instead of Uncle Bob?" So here's a picture of the whole clan when Bob and I got married. And that's Bob's daughter from his first marriage and my 3 kids there. We had a nice little family. But Carl carried on, went all through school with friends. And he did find he had some issues come against him because of his color. There wasn't a lot of black kids in the neighborhood, in the school. And there was some racism definitely going on. But he graduated from high school. You can see in the next picture his high school grad picture. And he did a few courses at college and, that type of thing, but really wasn't sure what he wanted to do. But then he came over to the church in Hawaii where I was pastoring. And he decided he wanted to get back in line and right with God. And he started attending the Bible college over there. And his first year, his freshman year, he was awarded the scholarship for the highest GPA of the freshman year students. He was given a scholarship for the highest GPA of the freshman year students. Amazing for a kid that was supposed to be a vegetable. And here he was. And then when it came to the graduation, I was hoping to have a picture of his Hawaii graduation, but I couldn't find it. In Hawaii, they have a tradition that if a friend of yours is graduating, you would give them a Hawaiian lei. And a lot of the kids, they get so many leis that they come up here, they can barely see. Some of them, they can't actually, have to make holes in them. So Carl had leis up here, he could barely see over the top of the leis. But he graduated cum laude, which means with honors when you're graduating from school in the U.S. So he graduated with honors. For someone that was supposed to be a vegetable, I think that was a pretty good job. He then went on to California and did his master's degree in theology at Fuller Seminary and he just graduated with his master's degree from down there. But when he moved back to Canada to help me, because I was going through some health issues, and he came back specifically to help me. And when he did, he was always the best brother for his sisters. Sometimes they found him a little overprotective and they want to sort of, Carl, give me some space, get away, but they were always happy to have him around. But in being an amazing brother for his sisters, he also became a fantastic, and still is, uncle for his nieces and nephews. There's a picture here of Carl with 4 of his nieces and nephews, and they just adored him, absolutely. They would come running and just jump up on him and grab him. And I mean, there was one picture that he had one in each arm and another one hanging onto his legs and standing on his feet. But they loved him, absolutely loved him. And then here's a picture of him and his sister with the 3 littlest nieces and nephews. And he faithfully went down. My youngest daughter lives in the States, and he faithfully made the drive at least once a month to go down there and see how she was doing and make sure she was doing okay with the kids. And if there's anything he could do to help, he always was there for her. And same with his older sister. He's always there for her, however he can be. And right now, with some health issues that she's dealing with, he's there for her. There's a picture here of him with his 2 sisters. He's the middle child, but he's obviously not the middle in height or size. So there's his older sister on one side and his younger sister on the other. And he is still, to this day, as protective of them as he was in high school. So it's really cute watching him. But Carl, when he was helping out in the church that I was pastoring when he was young, and we had a feeding program for the homeless, and he was always there caring for all of the people that were coming in and wondering if one was missing. He was always trying to find out where they were, making sure they were all okay, because of the compassion that God had built up within him. He had such a heart of compassion, and still does today. He's now pastoring a church of his own. And as he's pastoring, his heart isn't to build a big traditional mega church. His heart is to reach out to those that nobody else reaches out to. He's reaching out to those that have either been hurt by a church or have never known the Lord or walked away and not wanted anything to do with God or the church anymore. And that's who he's reaching out to. That's where his heart is going. That compassion is still overwhelming him today. So then, after I was looking at the story with Hector, and I'd heard of several people over the years that had been dealing with struggles of abortions and things like that, which is why I decided to hit the subject today, because I was just dealing with somebody this week who had an abortion 30 years ago, and it still tormented her. Every time she heard of the subject, every time she heard it mentioned, it tormented her. And so I thought, people have got to realize there is hope, but only God knows. That doctor, as far as he was concerned, there was no hope for Carl. He was going to be a vegetable. Well, a vegetable with a very high IQ, graduating cum laude from the receiving the scholarship for the highest grade point average of the freshman year students. I wouldn't call that a vegetable, even though he introduced himself as broccoli. But anyhow, I realize there's so many people that are here today that we really miss them if they'd been aborted, like was their history was supposed to be. This next picture, friend of mine that you've met through several of the programs, Pastor Hector Jimenez. This is a story, a little booklet on his life, The Miraculous Power of God, the life story of Pastor Hector Jimenez. And in this, it talks a lot about how his mother, he was the 13th child of 13 kids, and his mother was getting older and very weak, and she had some very serious health issues. And she found she was pregnant again with child number 13. And everyone, even some of her older kids, doctors, friends, everyone tried to convince her to have an abortion. And she couldn't do it. And I just think, today, here's our Pastor Hector at one point had the second largest church in the world. Second largest church in the world. And the statistics were amazing, what he was accomplishing. In his city, there was nothing that compared. He was having services 7 days a week. And at one point, 24 hours a day. Well, 23 actually, because they would close at midnight for an hour just to clean the building out properly. But other than that, they had service going round the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But if his mother had followed through with that abortion, we would not have that church that at that point was known as Ondas de Amor y Paz, waves of love and peace. But then there was one, I was looking for somebody that I knew had almost been aborted, and I found something just last night that really surprised me that I did not know. And I always check out sources and make sure that they're reliable sources. And this source actually came from the National Catholic Register. And I don't think they're going to be making something up just to make it look good. But anyhow, how many of you use an Apple computer, an Apple iPhone, an Apple iPad, or whatever? I mean, I'm using right now, I'm using an iPhone and an iPad and a laptop, etc. All Apple. But these would not have existed because Steve Jobs' mother almost aborted. Jobs' mother was 23 years old, but she was, really involved in different things and busy, and she almost decided to abort Steve, and she was encouraged to do so. But instead of an abortion, she decided not to abort and give birth to him and then put him up for adoption. Now, his mother, she actually had quite an education and graduated with master's, I believe it was, but she wanted her baby to have parents that were both with university degrees and highly educated, etc. But instead, he was adopted by loving parents, Paul and Clara Jobs, and they raised him along with another child that they had also adopted. But in his biography, Steve actually said, in one place, he said, I wanted to meet my biological mother, mostly to see if she was okay and to thank her, because I'm glad I didn't end up as an abortion. So that's what Jobs told the fellow that was doing his biography. So there's a picture here of Steve Jobs. We wouldn't have had that little apparatus that he's holding in his hand if the abortion had gone through. But his mother decided not to terminate and instead give him up for adoption, to give him a hope, to give him a chance to go on living. Another one that surprised me that I'd known for a little while, but it did surprise me, was a person that actually is known on the, pro-life side, pro-choice side of the spectrum, but she herself was almost aborted. And her teenage mother, Vernita Lee, gave her the gift of life, even when others encouraged her to abort. Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was almost aborted, but her mother went through and gave her life. There was several well-known personalities, actors, etc., politicians that were almost aborted, but this one here is quite a surprising one. Pope John Paul II. his mother was advised to abort him. She lost her daughter. That was before Pope John Paul. She lost her daughter before him to some medical complications shortly after she was born. But consequently, for medical reasons, she was advised to have an abortion. But luckily, his mother declined, though, and a new pope was born. So there's so many today that we don't realize what the world would have been like if the mother had gone through with the abortion. Another Canadian that I'm going to look at, because I've loved some of her music, not all of it, but some of it, but Celine Dion. Her mother, Teresa Tanguay Dion, was a mother of 14 children. And she was so overwhelmed with the kids that she already had that when she found out she was pregnant with Celine, she didn't think she could do it, and she was going to abort this last one. But if that had happened, look at all the beautiful music we would have missed out on. Look at all the things that she's accomplished. But there's so many musicians that were almost aborted. Some of them like Justin Bieber, for you, if anybody you're younger and know his era, was one of them. Andre Bocelli was another one. Cher, Aretha Kitt, Ethel Waters. There were so many of them that were going to be aborted. But things took place that changed it. And they're now here in this world today, making this world, in some ways, a better place. So, like Oprah Winfrey can be very thankful that her mother didn't go through with the abortion, even though that's the side that she leans at this time. But who knows what God will do to change the hearts. There's a song that I'm going to ask Jerry to do for us that I love. It's called Magnificent, because he is magnificent. And each and every one of these lives that we've been talking about are in the magnificent hands of our loving God. So Jerry, Magnificent.
It would take 1,000 years to tell 1,000th of an instant in your love. The greatest words I can imagine, just a fragment of a fraction of enough. Yet my eyes look unto you, not on the body of this death. And in my weakness, Lord, I praise you with this frail and faltering breath. You are magnificent, you are radiant, indescribable in your omnipotence. You are incredible, incomparable, and my breathless soul shall whisper when all other words are spent, you are magnificent. Can this human tongue so earthly and this heart that's so unworthy sing your praise? Yet I know you're right here listening, as my eyes with tears are glistening, my hands are raised, and the feeling is breathtaking as you lift me up to you, and the Spirit's warm embracing electrifies me through and through. You are magnificent, you are radiant, you're indescribable in your omnipotence. You are incredible, incomparable, and my breathless soul shall whisper when all other words are spent, You are magnificent. Now what else can I do but give my everything to you, the one who gave your everything to set me free. And bright the fire burns within to worship you, my radiant King, who reigns on heaven's throne eternally. You are magnificent. You are radiant. You're indescribable in your omnipotence. You are incredible, incomparable. And my breathless soul shall whisper when all other words are spent, you are magnificent. You are magnificent. Oh, you are magnificent.
Lord, you truly are magnificent. And Lord, as each of these different examples shows, only you know. Only you know the outcome. Father, when I was told by doctors that there was no chance of my child being normal, I really had to pray. It made it a very difficult pregnancy, with a lot of weight. How's it going to turn out? How's everything going to be? And prayer changes things. Because here's this baby. And actually, it was funny because when the doctors were checking him out after he was born, being that they'd said that he wouldn't be normal, checking him out to make sure that he was okay or that he wasn't normal was what they were looking for. But anyhow, Carl, being a typical little boy, they opened up his diaper and he peed straight in the doctor's face, all over his glasses and everything. But it was quite funny because the doctor said, well, I guess it's all working. But, God knows. God knew what he had in store for that young baby. God knew what he had in store for all of these others that I mentioned. God knew what he had in store for Pastor Hector Jimenez, pastoring the second largest church in the world for years that grew amazingly. I mean, in just a matter of 3 months, it went from 500 to 5,000 people in 3 months' time. Amazing figures. Any church planter today would think that's absolutely incredible. But that's what happened. God knows exactly what's ahead. And just like the title of today's program, only God knows. Only God knew what was going on with Carl. Although it was hard, very difficult. I didn't quite know how to handle it. Didn't really even know where to turn. But God knew. And God gave me this beautiful son. Today, right now, when there's so many health issues going on in my home and in my family, Carl is my biggest help. He gets me to my appointments. He gets me out for my daily exercise so I can start to be walking properly again. It's an amazing kid that I am so thankful every day that he's alive, that he's here. Just watching him with people amazes me. But then you look at people like Steve Jobs. Could you imagine not having Apple computers, Apple iPhones in this world today? It'd be a pretty different place. But God knows. And all the things Oprah Winfrey, from her television programs to her business things, and all of the worldwide effect that she has had with charitable programs all over the world. If her mother had aborted her, we wouldn't have had Oprah Winfrey and all her charities and all of the other ones, Lord. But God knew. Only God knows what he has in store, what lies ahead. But I sort of think at times, how many Carls of this world never got to live? How many Steve Jobs, brilliant people, never got to live? How many Oprah Winfreys never got to live? And I just pray that we will all be sensitive to God's leading and guiding, because truly only He knows. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this opportunity to share your love, Lord. And if in some way it can ease somebody's pain, ease somebody's hurt, ease their minds, set their hearts free, Lord, to know that no matter what decisions they made, that you understand, Lord. You see, for some, you see the pain that they were going through. You see the difficult situations that they were living through. You, Lord, were there for them in that time of need, in that difficult time. Just like you're there for them now, Lord, to see them set free of the pain that some have been carrying for many, many, many years. But Lord, I thank you that you're also there, Lord, for each one of these ones that was aborted. They're not held unattainable to reach heaven. Lord, they were a baby. They had no fault in it. They don't know. But Lord, you're there for each and every one of these little ones, Lord. Your word tells us that you love the little children, that they are little children, whether they're born yet or not born. They're little children, Lord, and you love each and every one of them. So, Father, I thank you for your heart for the children. And Lord, I thank you for your infinite wisdom, Lord, your magnificent love, Father, that speaks the truth to each of our hearts today, Lord. And Lord, I thank you that even though it was a difficult time for me when I was pregnant with my son, I was going through some difficult things, Lord, that you know, but you still gave me the strength to carry on and say, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. This child is too precious in your sight, Lord. So, Father, I thank you. And Lord, I pray that you will help each and every person that hears this, that might be making a decision right now, Lord, that you will give them the strength to hear your voice, to know your will, and that, Lord, you will see them through, no matter how difficult it might seem. In your precious name, amen. Amen. Hallelujah. God bless you, and we'll see you next week. But if you feel in the meantime that you would like to help support this ministry in some ways, Jerry will put up all the details on the screen for you to be able to do so. I will also leave the details in the description as to how you can still help Pastor Esteban Montalvo, because I know that they still have medical and financial needs, Lord, that only the Lord can do that miracle that they need. So God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Love you. Bye-bye.